Hey, it's Acoustic Stevo, the Human Patriot, coming to you with another video. This video is going to be titled The Dangers of Democracy. And I'm going to be talking about some things that I think are best illustrated by a book that I came upon in my late teens that I have really, I guess, gleaned a lot from and has stuck with me till this day, because the things talked about in it, I have not come across anything to disprove the concepts that were espoused in this particular book. And this book was called A Brave New World Revisited by Aldous Huxley. Now, A Brave New World in itself is another pretty good book, and I have read it. I don't remember the ins and outs of everything in that book as far as the storyline. I just kind of generally remember the basic, I guess, plot was a man and a woman in a society where people were genetically altered or genetically farmed, so to speak, to be in certain roles in their society, kind of decided to buck the system and have a romance. And the society itself had a lot of things implemented upon it so that the citizenry would live in a certain state of being and never rise up against the infrastructure that was put upon them to keep them in this state perpetually. And that's kind of the basis of this story. And I got a lot out of the story, but I'll tell you what, I got a lot more out of the full, basically fleshing out of the thought processes that went into creating pretty much the allegory of A Brave New World, which was given in A Brave New World Revisited. I would suggest everyone read this book. It really does speak to a number of things that we are dealing with now, in our past, and in our future we will be dealing with. And, you know, becoming an anarchist, I've had to think about some things that, you know, a lot of people around me hold as sacred, like democracy. And I've had to come to terms with how and why I view democracy as I do. Now, for me, democracy isn't this idol that I bow down before and worship as the solution to mankind's problems, many, many problems. And for the most part, it's because of the susceptibility of the human being to be psychologically brainwashed by the society around them, and the acceptance of those in the society around them of certain ideological norms that aren't necessarily true, but are broadcast subliminally hard enough and for long enough to skew the societal aggregate perception of reality into a paradigm that can possibly support totalitarianism. So, because democracy doesn't break the chains of totalitarianism, because of the human's inclination to be susceptible to brainwashing, it kind of goes out the door for me as really a practical solution for the destruction of totalitarianism, which for me is what and why I choose to be an anarchist. When I say what and why, the what of it is anarchy itself is the what. What is the solution? Anarchy. We as a people, we've been programmed to believe that anarchy can't be a solution, and we're given all these reasons as to why. But it's never been fully fleshed out. And that's what I intend to do until I die, is fully flesh out the what and why of anarchy and how it possibly could be a solution for mankind to get along peaceably and to free themselves from slavery. That's not what this video is going to be about, but I think it's worth stating as to why I'm doing this video. Because, we want to enshrine democracy. And, I've put a lot of thought into, right now we live in a republic if you're an American, right? To where we have representatives that are supposed to represent the people mathematically in our legislative branch, so that we have a voice as to making laws, etc., etc. But in the actuality of the situation that we're in, this is definitely not what's happening. And all you have to do is look at simple things like the election of Donald Trump. And I'm going to explain my breakdown of what I think happened with the election of Donald Trump. I first off don't think Donald Trump is a Republican. I think his acting and his life kind of speaks to that. He himself has said that he has given to Democrats and Republicans and hadn't really ascribed to a particular political paradigm until recently, before he decided to run as the Republican candidate. That speaks volumes to me. He is not an ideologue. He is someone who co-opted the system and turned it on its head as a wrecking ball. And the only reason why he was able to do that is because when he was put up on the screens, the brainwashing screens, of all the people that would determine whether or not he would be elected, he had enough power, because of the money he had accrued, to do so in a way that was effective. And his brand, his messaging, and the systems that he was using, such as Twitter and the mainstream media before it turned on him, were highly effective to get his messaging out. And that's all it was propaganda. Donald Trump was a very successful propagandist. It has nothing to do with being a Republican. He could have done the same thing as a Democrat. Maybe not as a libertarian, because the branding wouldn't have been as powerful and had the backing of those who just automatically vote one way, Republican in this instance, to successfully pull off what he pulled off. But it is historic. It is never been done before. And it's pretty brilliant and ingenious, if you ask me. That doesn't mean I think it's awesome and great. But in a way, it kind of allowed the people to say, hey, normally we're given two choices. And this time we're given two choices, but one of those choices wasn't supposed to be. Donald Trump was not supposed to be the Republican candidate. Definitely not. I mean, it's pretty easy to see that the only reason why he did was because he used successful propaganda to do so, alright? And that's what I'm getting at. Propaganda. And why democracy is a very fallible system because it is susceptible to propaganda and the mass indoctrination of whoever the voting population is to propaganda. I believe, one of the first things that we should ever teach our children about when they're learning their ABCs, and they're learning how to write their letters, and they're learning how their numbers and their early math, we should teach them critical thinking and what propaganda is so that they can see it for themselves, because the highest potency of propaganda is done to the young mind before they even understand what it is. And that's just the truth of it. And I think Aldous Huxley really spoke to this and spoke to how people could become enslaved willingly. And that's what I think democracy greatest weakness is that the population itself be so hyper propagandized that it willingly choose slavery. And we see it. I'm not going to point out too much of exactly how that's happening and where it's happening, but I'll probably get to some of it, because I could go on for days and weeks as to exactly how this is being done and where it's being done, who's doing it, etc., etc., etc. But I think for the competent intellectual mind, it's not too hard to just see that it's happening. And I'll just leave it at that for the moment so I can kind of flesh this out a little bit in its entirety before I get into the specifics. So what Aldous Huxley was saying in A Brave New World Revisited was that there would be a help aid to the acceptance of the propaganda to kind of go in tandem with it, and would be what would make it highly successful for something like the world in A Brave New World to come into fruition. And in his novel, that thing was called Soma. All right? And now I'm going to flavor this and color this a little bit more, because I don't believe that it is going to manifest as Soma. I believe it's already manifested, and it's a lot more varied than Soma. You could find your own Soma in almost practically anything. And that's what I'm going to focus on. We have so much at our fingertips, so many different things that we can numb our mind with, numb our being with, to the realities of this existence, that there does not need to be a pill that you ingest that will make you feel a certain way enough to cope with the reality of the enslavement. That can be done through a number of ways. And I know this because I've employed quite a few of these things in my lifetime. I've used these things, and so I know that they can be used effectively, and that it isn't one thing called a Soma. Maybe one day there will be some popularized drug that people can take to cope, and that's kind of the pharmaceutical business. Maybe something like a Valium if you have high anxiety, things like this. They're already being done. That I'm not going to speak too much into that, because, my viewpoint on it is, I don't like it. But the people that I love use it. So I'm not going to sit in judgment on those people, because I understand that they are made up of a different genetic makeup than I am. They have different capabilities of intellect than I do. They have a number of things that offset them to being manipulated into believing that something like Valium or Xanax, you pick your poison, is an effective way to deal with the legitimate things, the legitimate tortured state of being that they find themselves in if they do not employ the services of said thing, right? So soma, I'm just going to call it soma, of said soma, right? I am not particularly going to judge those people because I've done the same thing, and it's very easy to do, and I may end up doing it again 300 more times before I finally am done with it completely, because there's so many different things you can do it with, and I'm going to talk to a number of them. All right, you can numb yourself with entertainment. For me, entertainment is kind of a very potent and effective way to escape. And I'm not saying leisure is a bad thing, right? So what I'm saying is to dive and into entertainment just to be entertained and to shut off your immersement in the present and in the actual reality of your existence in favor of some other world that you can escape into is tempting. Sometimes it could possibly be used kind of like a Xanax or something like that to reduce the amount of stress that you're under, because stressors are things that will cause you to age faster, things that will cause your body to break down, right? So finding ways to deal with stress are legitimate, but when you go too far into it, such as binge watching. Now, I'm not going to give this too bad of a connotation, because you know what, a little binge watching may be appropriate from time to time. But when it becomes your coping mechanism of your reality, say, I'm going to give some for instances here, all right? And these are things that I've done, all right? Say you choose to binge watch over something more constructive. So you only have so much time in your life, right? To where it becomes almost a drug. Like you're just doing it repeatedly, day after day after day, week after week after week, month after month after month. You're spending so much time in these fantasy worlds that are such a multitude and so great in a way. They give you it's almost like the thing that was happening in Fahrenheit 451, I believe it's called, by the famous science fiction writer. His name's slipping my mind right now, but you guys all know who I'm talking about. And in that novel, his wife is constantly watching this screen that everyone has access to. Now, I actually saw a commercial on my DVR. Actually, it wasn't the DVR. It was the on demand, which is great, right? On demand. You only have to watch a small amount of commercials. Sometimes you can't fast forward them, but it's the program. You can pause it whenever you want. You can rewind. On demand. It's great. Well, I was watching Fear the Walking Dead on Spectrum, and there's this commercial for this thing called, I believe it was a mirror.co, if I'm not mistaken. And it's this thing that looks like one of those mirrors that you could put up, those full body mirrors that you could put up that aren't really in style nowadays. They're kind of, you don't see them a whole lot anymore. But this was like a big screen, all right? And on this screen, you can interact, and it was putting it out there as a way to connect with people to work out, right? To work out your body and to, have access to different workout programs, and you could see the people in front of you and work out. It made it really interactive, and I think it's pretty cool. All right, I don't got enough money to invest in something like that, but it is a pretty cool thing, right? But it really did hearken to me to this thing that, in the future, it might not just be to work out. It will be for a number of things. This full, and maybe it will be a wall and not even just a mirror, so to speak. Something very interactive that you can immerse yourself in, the quote-unquote soma of entertainment. And that's only one. Now you could go even further. For me, a big one has been pornography, all right? A lot of people won't even talk about this because of the shame involved. But I'm way beyond that. You know what? I understand I'm a sexual being. I understand what I've done to my subconscious mind with pornography. I've embedded the female genitalia and imagery and the naked female body, which in the past, like before the advent of the internet, to the degree I've embedded my subconscious mind with this imagery, would not even have been possible in the human. So I'm, in a sense, a different type of human. And there's a bunch of us out there. I'm not the only one using pornography, all right? Now, I've done some things to counteract this because it's not that I think pornography is evil. I believe that if you watch certain types of pornography, that is evil. And so what I've done to kind of wean myself off of it, and I've had to wean myself off of a number of things in my life, and one of the best methods I've used to do this is to use the things that have caused me to dive into these things to begin with to help me come out of them. And really, what has caused me to dive my being into these things to begin with is the power of the subconscious mind and the subliminal messaging systems that have embedded my subconscious mind to be so drawn to these things that I have immersed myself in them. So there's this thing called, there's different ways you can interact with your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind, I would argue, is more powerful than your conscious mind, and it's something that you should be aware of. And I think we should be teaching our children about the subconscious mind at a very young age, like when they're learning about their ABCs and all the symbols that they're going to have to grow up with, the numbers and the letters and all the symbols that implement and seed their mind with all this imagery that we think is really just not a big deal. But if we study it, we will find out how big of a deal it is. It really is. So I'm not going to go too far into that right now, but what I'm getting at is the subconscious mind is where you start to get yourself out of things that you've become addicted to. Let's just call it what it is, addiction. What it is it's you could be addicted to anything. And for me, what pornography would do would be, it's not like I was constantly using it like I did with entertainment where I'd binge watch, but I would use it as a way to give myself a shot of dopamine and an orgasm all at the same time, which is hugely pleasurable. And, it would be a stress relief, a way to de-stress. And I started recently, like within the last few years, trying to pull myself out of it, like as a means of de-stressing. Because there's so much pornography in the world that I'm going to come across that the way that pornography came into existence doesn't align with anything that I want to be. For instance, people could be being trafficked. I don't know. People, I don't know who's doing these videos and the circumstances behind how the people that are in them have been, I guess, put in them, so to speak. Why they're in them. I don't know the why of it is the biggest. So over the past few years, when I realized how much that was hurting my soul, the not knowing of the why, I've started to get away from the ambivalent pornography, the stuff that I don't know the why of, and finding more concrete pornography that I do know the why of. And that's the first step that I took. And I don't want this to go too far off topic, so I'm going to try to rein myself in here and just get to the point so I can make the broader point of the dangers of democracy. But I do think it's something worth exploring and fleshing out, because I think it might help other people to do what I've done. All right? Because it is a form of soma, and I do want to explain how to get out of it. How to use your own subconscious mind to get out of it. All right, so what you can do is, that's a good first step. Consciously, I'm not even talking about the subconscious mind, consciously trying to subject yourself to less and less pornography that you don't know where it's coming from, right? And one of the other things I tried to do was to not look at women that were significantly younger than me. I'm a 40-year-old man. So how this applied in the real practical world was, I tried not to look at women in their 20s. So I tried to look at women in their 30s or older when I was dealing with pornography. All right, now I wasn't always successful at that. Sometimes I'd come across a video and whatever. A really attractive 20-year-old would have been what I used that day to give myself my dopamine injection. All right? That's the other thing. You got to really look at it for what it is. When you look at it like it's like this thing you got to be ashamed of or anything like that, no, just break it down for what it is. You're using it to get pleasure. And the real problem with it is that you don't know where it came from. So I found on YouTube a YouTuber who does pornography with her husband. They have their own thing going on, and they actually they're on YouTube showing lingerie, clothing and such that's sexual, and that was really helpful to me, because they also have a Pornhub page, and I'm not about paying for pornography. I'm not going to do that. It's free, right? People are doing it, and it's free. Maybe, there's a lot of controversy in that. People that think, you should pay for it if you're using it. But, don't put it out there for free then. That's the way I look at it. It's free. If I had to pay for it, I probably wouldn't use it. So if you're going to put it out there for free, whatever. That's on you. That's not on me. So what I'm getting at is, I found this couple, and they have some free pornography on Pornhub. So there we go. I was very attracted to this woman. She's having sex in ways that I don't have to feel like I'm wondering if she's being exploited, because she's the one in charge of everything. All right? And that's really empowering in itself, is finding sexual things, because we are sexual beings. And I'm an adult, I'm not a kid, so I can interact in a very adult, sexual way with the universe, all right? I'll just leave it at that. And so, I don't have any problem viewing this woman and her stuff, but I wanted to take it to the next level. I wanted to be free of the addiction to the dopamine kick of using pornography and getting my soma from that, all right? That's really what it came down to. It had nothing to do with me thinking pornography is evil, because I don't. Straight up. I don't think pornography is evil, as long as it isn't rooted in exploitation. And that's possible out in this world to find pornography not rooted in exploitation. For instance, pornography doesn't even need to be visual. You can, Anne Rice is one of my favorite writers. She wrote this series of novels, erotica novels, based on the Sleeping Beauty mythology and bringing it and turning it into a world where people are in a really, really weird sexual landscape. I'll just leave it at that, all right? And I myself would never want to do a lot of the things in this book, but it isn't going to hurt me to listen to it. There are things in it that did really excite me. I got really excited and was able to give myself a dopamine climax without even using imagery, like actual real world imagery. I was able to use Anne Rice's imagination, and that's a great thing. That I think that's a great thing. I may actually write an erotica novel at some point. I'm really thinking about it. That might be my next year's project. This year I'm doing poetry. Maybe next year, I have a number of things I want to do in my life, and that's on the list, all right? So it's not that I'm a prude or think there's some kind of bad thing with pleasuring yourself and masturbating. No, I'm not this. I really think the no-fap thing is kind of stupid, all right? Now, there is, I think, some merit to it as far as getting yourself under control, self-discipline, but when you ascribe like a judgmental viewpoint to it as right and wrong, that's where you lose me, all right, with the no-fap thing. I think no-fap could be it's kind of like fasting, right? I think fasting is cool. I don't do it a whole lot, really at all. I eat every day. Maybe at some point I will, because I know it is something that is good and I may explore it. I may explore no-fap for the same reason, right? But not as like an end-all be-all solution. But what I'm getting at is I kind of wanted to get to a point where I wasn't using imagery itself as a means for this dopamine kick for my soma, so to speak. So I went to the subconscious mind because I had used it so effectively in my past. And one of the things I used it for was to quit smoking cigarettes. And I've talked about this in a number of videos. You can look through my videos, and if you really want to get the total breakdown of it, I'm just going to say I'm not going to totally break down how to reprogram the subconscious mind. That's going to be for, I know I've made videos on it, but I may make specifically one called How to Reprogram the Subconscious Mind. So I'll leave that to that. But what you do, simply, is you create a image that is infused with subconscious energy that you can flash to yourself as an image, and it will, because our minds are really absorbent to symbols and images, it will begin the process of programming you subconsciously, because the conscious mind is what is so hard. It's the self-discipline thing, and I struggle with the self-discipline thing. That's one of the things I am definitely working on in this life, is understanding how to become more self-disciplined. So in the meantime, I'm going to use a tool like reprogramming in my subconscious mind when my discipline is just not cutting it, all right? And this is one way you can do it. You create what's called a glyph, and you create it in a certain way, which I'm not going to get into, but you flash it to yourself enough times and you get your mind in a certain state of receptiveness that it embeds into your subconscious mind, and then it just plays out in your life because your subconscious mind has absorbed the energy, and it's a lot more powerful than your conscious mind. All right, so I'm in the process of getting pornography entirely out of my mind, and I've used this system to do it. All right, and it's being very successful. I've had a lot of success with it, and it's been very successful in a number of things I've used it for. All right, so you should try it if you're struggling with some kind of addiction or something. Basically, you make an "I will" statement and you turn it into a glyph. For smoking cigarettes, my "I will" statement was simply, "I will not smoke cigarettes." And then I broke that down and turned it into a glyph through a process. If you really want to know how, I do have a video on this. You could Google Acoustic Stevo, quit smoking, something like that. You should be able to find it. If not, and you're interested, hit me up in my comments and I'll direct you to the video. Or you could just look through my videos. But very highly successful, to the point where I didn't even have to try to quit smoking cigarettes. I didn't have cravings for cigarettes. All right? That's when I discovered how powerful the subconscious mind was, because it became practical and applicable in my life. It wasn't just some mental exercise that I adhered to. It actually transformed my life. This process did, all right? And that's how I knew how powerful it was. So what I'm getting at is there are a number of somas. I gave you 2 examples. Binge watching entertainment and getting lost in entertainment, and pornography, right? You can use that for your soma, so to speak. But somas in a Brave New World, it's more of a constant thing. Pornography is not going to give that to you. It's just going to give you a dopamine kick, and then you're going to come back to it later for more dopamine. Binge watching is a little bit more of a soma than that, because you can stay in that state of mind for long periods of time and really, really cope with a lot of bad things, as long as you have access to Netflix, all right? And that's only, like $12 a month? So yeah, we have access to numerous types of soma, which is just really a way for us to get away from the actual reality of this existence. And I'm not here to preach it to what the actual reality of this existence is. There's plenty of material out there. You can figure it out for yourself. You can look through my videos. You can look through other people's. You can become a searcher, is what I'm going to call it. Someone who searches for knowledge. Someone who thirsts for actual real knowledge, spiritual or otherwise. Become a searcher. Whatever is in your heart, search for it. Whatever it is. Find the answers for yourself. Don't look to an authority to give you the answers, because that is the problem. That is the thing, the propaganda, where we are programmed. We have these things pushed at us constantly from a very young age, when we're very impressionable of what is worthy of our adoration and our clinginess as a concept of what is good in this universe and what is not. And I say challenge those things. Just because your society pushes it at you as good, for instance, our school system. I would contend that our school system is horrible. 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 Alright? Has the word horror in it. I would definitely say our school system is ripe for a dystopian novel comparable to 1984, Brave New World, etc., to just be written about it. Just the experience of going through primary school through high school. And then, you know what? Another novel could be written about college. Whatever. We don't even need these things. These things are the past. The future is to educate in a different way. More aligned with how it was done in the past before we had our taxes being used to mass indoctrinate people, because that's what it is. It's mass indoctrination. It's not public education. It's mass indoctrination. Not public education, but mass indoctrination. All right? That we can't co-opt out of. Our tax money is going to be taken and is going to go towards this programming of our young. And it's really bad, and I'm not going to get too deep into that right now because I'm trying to focus on the dangers of democracy. Now, I would say, my guess, and this is just a guess, 95% of Americans believe that the public education system is flawed, but is a necessity for our youth, is a necessity for our society to be a functional and good society. I challenge that belief as propaganda that's been indoctrinated into everyone, that everyone adheres to, except for a few. You got your homeschoolers out there, and I'm going to give you props if you're a homeschooler. You're doing it a lot more the right way. I am a homeschooler. My children are being homeschooled. And we even let our youngest go back to public school last year because he was given issues to his mom. And we knew it wasn't going to be a solution for the long run, but we wanted him to see what it was like. And so he went back and he made the decision that he wants to come back to doing homeschooling next year. And that's great. I mean, it worked out for our benefit as well, because there's a lot of things going on within the whole public school system that's not really good for him. So we're glad we were able to get him right back out of it. But he was as much as this decision-making process as we were. And it's not that we're giving our child free rein to make adult decisions for his education, but I do believe that he should be a part of it because I think he's capable of it. If I didn't think he was capable of it, it'd be a different story. But he's coming back to homeschooling next year for his 5th grade year, and my oldest, he's going to be a junior in high school this year. He's at the top of his class and everything. He's in the honor society and all sorts of things. He's doing really well. He's learning a lot. And this, I believe, is a better way to have your children in society. Because if you lead them out into this public school system, the indoctrination cancer, they're going to be indoctrinated. Whereas if you don't, they have less likely of a chance. They may still, depending on their IQ, a lot of other things, they may still succumb to it and whatever. But it'll be less likely, all right? Now, I'm not an extremist. I'm just somebody who sees reality for what it is, all right? Let's just get that right off the bat. And I'm not tooting my horn. I'm just telling you the facts of being very confident in the information that I have come to conclusions on, because I've put a lot of hard work into understanding exactly what's going on. And I think you should too. I think that's the solution. That's the solution. Everybody needs to take accountability for what they believe and why they believe it, and not to fall back on institutions to give them a book or a doctrine to follow so that they can focus on whatever it is that is outside of themselves as a solution, all right? Because really the solution lies within yourself, in knowing yourself. Know thyself. You know thyself, you're going to be happy no matter what, because you'll understand what true happiness is. True happiness is knowing thyself. It doesn't matter how crazy this world becomes. It doesn't matter if the mark of the beast starts getting put on everyone tomorrow and I have to deal with that. I'm still going to be happy because I know myself. And I know exactly what I will do in that situation. And what I will do is not pick up arms and go fighting my way at something that is going to kill me. How I will deal with that is not going to be to take the mark of the beast unless they physically come and like make me do it and don't give me the option of shooting me instead, because I would give them that option. I'd be like, if they wanted me to, if my options were to die or to put some kind of tracking device or some kind of technology in my body, I would choose to die. I'm not so certain they even need to make us do that. And I'll give you a little taste of how easily they could do this without us even needing to comply. There's something called nanotechnology. We already know they're spraying our skies. If you look up at the skies, you'll start to understand that. All you have to do is seek for yourself. I'm not going to lay it out for you. Seek for yourself and you'll see they're spraying our skies. All they would need to do is spray our skies with a certain type of nanotechnology that I believe they have. And I'm not a crazy conspiracy theorist. Maybe they don't have this. I'm open to the idea they don't, but the fact that I can understand how it could very well be is really what I'm going to go with, but it's not going to be my belief system. My belief system is going to be simply, this could already exist. This could already be being done to every single one of us. We could already be under the mark of the beast and its actual, what it would be used for and why, without our knowledge or compliance. You know, they could spray us with nanotechnology that can get into our body and could set up shot, turn us into walking pingers that ping out information about everything that's going on with us genetically in a number of ways, and we could know absolutely nothing about it. And guess what? Even that being the reality, even if that is what they are doing, and I find out that is what they are doing, I will still be happy. I will still be happy because I know myself. And I know that that is really the most important thing. All right? So if that's the most important thing, why would I ever believe in democracy? Which is the belief that the masses, you know, the cream will rise to the top, so to speak, and the masses will come up with the best solutions for society. I don't believe so. I believe the masses are highly programmable, and I believe it's not very hard to see that. All you have to do is study psychology to figure that one out. So with that being the case, that the masses are highly programmable, democracy is really, really fallible. Now, I've come to the idea of how we could implement democracy, and there's a reason why I guess we haven't, and I think it's just that our society was set up on a republic, and the idea that certain people of a certain class in education were more capable of administering legislative choices that would affect us all than the masses. That's why we have a system of a republic instead of pure democracy. That's one of the reasons. I think the other is, back when this whole system was constructed, there wasn't really a practical way to make a democracy functional because we didn't have the technology to do so, which we do nowadays. We have the technology. Not only, and everyone's afraid of hackers, and they'll give you as a good reason why we can't employ this technology, because it could be hacked, and then we're all subject to the whims of those who would program us through making us believe that the democratic result of a vote is other than what it actually was by hacking it and giving us a bad result. That's a legitimate concern, especially if you do it outside of what I'm going to say. What I'm going to say is we have blockchain technology, we have crypto ways that really, really do set up parameters in which there is a nearly impossible way for a hacker to actually circumvent democracy and do such a thing. Like, we could actually technologically make this happen right now. People don't want to see that, but I'm telling you, it's true. So therefore, democracy is at our fingertips. We could make it happen at any point in time, where everyone on Earth, and I do mean on Earth, I don't just mean in your country that you're in, has a say in everything that gets employed on Earth. Like, that could happen tomorrow. Like, we have the technology to make it happen. But that's dangerous, because of people, the programmed people making the decisions. All that would entail is good marketing by those with power and money, and then you have people basically complying to their own slavery. Think about what I just said, and that's why I'm saying you should read A Brave New World Revisited, because Huxley does a great job of explaining all this, and I think it's luckily, I don't even know if it's the case, but luckily in America, Brave New World is still a part of a great, at least it was when I was going to high school, a great number of literature, novels that you come in contact with and are part of required reading for high schoolers. I hope that continues, along with 1984, Catcher in the Rye, a number of things. All right, you can get a lot from literature, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be, and possibly may become. It might be hard for me to do, but I may become a high school educator, for or maybe a college. It might be more appropriate for college, just because I won't have to deal with the public education system. And I don't even know if I want to do it at that point, though, because the people I actually want, the time frame of the people to actually get the knowledge, I believe, is in high school and junior high, when you're first reading novels, you're first coming across literature in a way that's significant, and you're writing essays, you're discovering the themes, all these things. I would say these American literature and literature from around the world is just as important as the Bible in Western civilization, of people understanding exactly where we're at in our society and being able to function as humans, and to bring forth their humanity in the way that they're supposed to, so that we can develop a society based more on cooperation and love than we can currently get to if we don't look at things like literature as really valuable. The arts is getting less and less valuable as it goes on. But thankfully, we're still in America. We have literature as a part of, essay writing as a part of what we're doing. The books, I don't know what the books they're doing now are, but back when I was a kid, it was things like Lord of the Flies, To Kill a Mockingbird, Brave New World, things that challenged your mind and your beliefs. Separate Peace. Things that were, in my opinion, really good to read. I think all those books that I just said, everybody should read. But I'm going to get away from that now, because I do have this thing where I do kind of go in a very strange way to get to my point. And I am trying to figure out a better, more mainlined way to do so, but it's kind of just the way my brain operates. Because what happens is I go on a tangent, and then something occurs to me about the tangent that I'm going on that I think is really something that should be explored a little bit further than if I give it just a small amount of room to back up my main argument. I think that does a disjustice to me fully fleshing out whatever it is I have to say. So I'm really, I guess, letting myself be myself And I'm hoping that people will connect to that and be okay with it. Because part of what it is the attention span dilemma. I'm going to call it the attention span dilemma. People don't want to watch or listen to things for too long of a period of time because it's about being entertained. And you'll notice this. I was a film student, so you'll notice this in how films are made. It used to be that there were these long takes, these long scenes, like between the cuts in the film. You had more time to like fully explore a scene with the imagery of what's in frame. But now you cut like cut, and it's to keep the attention span, because they found out that that's where what pushes popularity of a film is. If you do these long things, there's not as much patience for that type of thing because of the human attention span. Now, for me, I've always kind of flown against swam against the current, I should say, and I've always really enjoyed long scenes, long cuts, people filming in black and white, people going at a story that shouldn't be entertaining and not trying to make it entertaining, but telling a story. All these types of things in both literature and filmmaking, all right? And so I've never really been attracted to the fast-paced cut thing. That being said, it's highly effective, and it's effective for a reason, because there is something that's being done to humanity's minds where they make it to where we don't want to look at long format things. Now, that being said, I'm highly hopeful that that could be changing, because what I think's happening, it's like if you eat too much of anything, like, yeah, you might like dessert, but if all you can eat is dessert, you're going to eventually be like, okay, I've had enough dessert, I want to start finding other things. And that's what I see happening with long format podcasts being as popular as they are. Is just one iteration of my point on how long format things could be coming back into style because people have been eating dessert for long enough. And we are, after all, humans. I think a lot of the programming is going to fail because of a number of things. There's this thing called information overload, all right? And that's where it's being done to you so much that you get overloaded with it. It's not subtle enough, and therefore it draws way too much attention to itself, and you become aware of it. And then after you become aware of it, you no longer have to live in it anymore because you're aware of what's being attempted to be done to you. And I would say commercials is highly one of these things, you know. Now people don't want to watch commercials. They'll do anything in their power to get away from commercials. For instance, I was talking about on demand. Some of them I can fast forward through. Some they make you watch the commercials, but even if they make you watch the commercials, they don't pack too many of it. Whereas, you know, live network TV, you're going to be watching a lot of commercials, right? People are getting away from these things because it's not just the people themselves, but the people are sick of it. The marketing isn't as effective because people hate commercials. Like nowadays, commercials have to make you laugh and be entertaining, or no one's going to look at the commercial. It can't just be branding, and the branding has to be highly creative. And even the branding itself, people are aware of what's being done to them. They're aware that these commercials are marketing. So even before the commercial starts, before they start watching the commercial, they're aware of what's being done. So in a way, they're only watching it to get that, oh, that was funny. Maybe I'll look into that brand. If I'm actually even at all attracted to whatever it is, it's falling on deaf ears quite a bit nowadays. The whole marketing thing in general, the whole marketing landscape. And where people are finding new ways of marketing. You know, you could say marketing is a form of propaganda, because what you do is you get your branding out there, your message, whatever it may be, and it doesn't even matter how true it is, unless you're like really pushing something that's not true. You're going to get away with whatever pretty much you say. This is the best thing, or, you know, this is the greatest thing, or whatever, this is something that you need, whatever it is that you're saying, you can say pretty much anything. Politicians do it all the time. Lawyers do it. Lots of people do it. We do it to our children by pushing these idioms on them that come from our culture that we've aligned ourselves with and repeating them to our children, and then they go out and they hear them from a number of other adults and other children that are saying the same thing, and pretty soon their critical thinking skills go to nil and they've accepted whatever that idiom is, even if it may not be true at all. That's just a for instance. Memes. Memes are highly effective, especially for propaganda. But at the same time, we've become so infiltrated with them, they've kind of lost their attractiveness. They're kind of losing their appeal. And that's why long format intellectual conversations are having their moment for the moment. All right? No telling how long this will go on, but I'm quite enjoying it. It's something I really enjoy. The fact that people are starting to come up with their own answers outside of the propaganda. All right? As a species, we're doing this. All over the world, we're doing this. And for me, that gives me a lot of hope for a lot of things. And it's, I believe, a part of the Aquarian age. Because the individual is really what the Aquarian age is about. It's about us learning how to be individuals and be valued in being individuals, and to really find our groove and our place in it. And the only way you can do that is if the hierarchies that be that focus on non-individuality kind of are supplemented and replaced by systems such as anarchy. And that's why I think we might be ripe for anarchy. It's just, at least we're ripe for it being understood more and taking us another step up to us understanding why it's the best way to go about being a human being on Earth. And, really, it's not that hard to figure out how we can do it. And I really want to become more involved with other anarchists, because at this point I haven't, because I'm such an infant in it. But I want to become more and more involved with other anarchists, especially in demonstrating the practicality of it in books, in film, in art, all sorts of ways. I mean, this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life, unless somehow I am persuaded by the universe and my seeking, which I will never stop doing, that anarchy itself is corrupt and not the way to go. Because right now, I'm really excited about it. I mean, it really does seem like the way to go. Now it's just fleshing out the details of how to make it happen. The biggest part of that is making other people see the implications that a successful anarchic system could have for the happiness of not only the human in their lifetime, but humanity as a whole, in the ability of the human being to actually be the human being in its full capacity. And I believe if that can be illustrated in an effective way, then the rest will kind of play out. Now, there's always going to be dangers. Things can be corrupted, but that's a part of it, is not getting into the idea that anarchy is the end-all be-all without it being more moral. If it's moral, then I can potentially see how it could be the end-all be-all. I'll just put it that way, if it's moral. So we have to figure out, if it's moral, what's that mean, and how does it actually look, and what could it mean? Because there are things, like I just started reading into other people's ideas on anarchy, because mine was just simple. I was introduced to it through Mark Passio, and it's pretty much government is slavery, and after you accept that, you can start to build your own ideas of what anarchy is right off the bat. All you have to do is accept that government is slavery, and look around at the government that you're dealing with, and it's not hard to see how government is slavery. And then you have to not let yourself talk yourself out of believing that because of all the idioms that everyone else is throwing at to you, all the yes buts, government is evil, but, you got to get rid of all the buts and just stick with government is slavery, government is evil. I'm going to, that to me doesn't mean that I'm going to try to pick up arms and change the face of humanity through brute force, but it does mean that I don't even own a gun. I'll put it that way. I've said this several times. Nor do I plan on owning a gun unless I absolutely feel like I need to for some reason, which I don't. I'll be honest, I just really don't. And it aligns more to myself and what I believe about myself than anything. And I'll just straight up tell you, so you can get a little bit of an idea how far I've gone into individuality. I believe I am capable of defending myself without a gun. Like, I'll just leave it at that. Through a number of ways. I'm learning martial arts. There is the thing called being highly attuned to your surroundings, so you see things before they happen. That's something I practice. That's called living in the now. So, for instance, if I'm in a movie theater and I notice a door open, my pinger goes up. My mind comes out of the movie immediately. I assess the situation, all right? Whatever it may be. Whatever your movie theater may be. I feel like I don't need a gun. I mean, I don't see myself coming upon somebody who's got a gun where I could pull my gun out and be like, okay, I'm going to kill you before you kill me. That could happen, but I'm not putting myself in situations where that's going to be an issue, so therefore I don't really need a gun. I mean, I don't think there'd be anything wrong with it. Maybe after my children are grown and are adults, I might get a gun. And not only that, I might get a concealed carry permit. And I might walk around, if I'm not a truck driver, because they screw you if you're a truck driver, you're not allowed to carry a weapon in your truck. But if I'm no longer a truck driver and I'm just working in some capacity where I can go home every day, I can go out into public, whatever, I would have no problem carrying a gun right on my hip, maybe like in the Old West, for everyone to see, just like a cop, whatever. I'd have no problem with that. Not only that, I think everybody should really keep that as a possibility for their life. Why not? You know yourself. If you know that there would be no problem with carrying a gun around, carry a gun around. You have the right to do it. One of the reasons why I don't is because I have kids and I don't I don't need a gun, first off, all right? That's not why I would choose to own a gun, because I think I need one. I would choose to own a gun because I would want one. I would want to carry around a gun. It would be fun to carry around a gun all the time and to break norms and to make people think for themselves in a very tangible way. Because if you're walking around with a gun, people are going to automatically have to think for themselves because they're going to see a gun, all right? They're going to have to, you're making them at that point think for themselves, which I think is something that is a good thing to do to people. I think making people think for themselves is a good thing to do. That's kind of why I was attracted to becoming a high school English teacher and exploring this literature in a class framework and writing essays, because there's a lot to be mined out of American literature, and it would be a great practical way for me to get students and young people to use critical thinking skills and to understand symbolism, because symbolism is important. So, I mean, I still might do that at some point because, why not? Why not? It's something I could see myself doing. Or maybe I could start an online school. That would probably be better. Start an online school, because that's really, I don't believe in the public education system, so why go into it, you know what I mean? Right now, my kids are in an online public school, which is kind of cool. I mean, we could choose to do them totally off the curriculum, so to speak, of what people are taught, but I don't think there's any problem with the curriculum itself. And for our kids to know what everybody else is being taught, it's the environment it's being taught in and the way that it's being taught that can be dangerous inside of a public school system. Not only that, it's their classmates who can be a problem because they indoctrinate each other with all sorts of bullshit. Why is peer pressure so powerful? Well, it's because children are highly susceptible to peer pressure for a number of reasons that I'm not going to get into. So, now, one of the cool things about, I'm just going to talk about this for a minute, because I'm going to be stopping here soon, and I've kind of illustrated my points on the dangers of democracy to a certain extent, that if after making this point I can kind of wrap it up with. But homeschooling. I would highly suggest you to homeschool. Not only that, if you are, I'll take it one step further. If you are a person who wants to be a parent, I'm going to tell you what I believe about that, all right? I don't believe, and I'll tell everybody this. I mean, this is not a secret. I will tell my family members this. I will tell everybody this. I don't believe that you should send your kids to public school to be their babysitters. I think one of the parents should be their primary teacher, or you should find a tutor, somebody that can educate them that you trust, to be a primary teacher for them, a mentor to them, so to speak, or at different stages, kind of like they did it back in the olden days. They did have public schoolhouses, but a lot of the people were giving their kids education by hiring a teacher to teach them. A teacher. Not a bunch of teachers. A teacher. A highly competent teacher. And I think that, now that can be done and done in different ways, but that model of how I think you should really educate your kids, not putting them into the school system, which is screwed up in so many ways, is something you should consider before you even become a parent, because this is what will happen if you don't. You are risking everything with your child. You are risking them learning all sorts of things through a system that you have no control of, because you're not there to talk to your child about it. And when they get home, you're probably so highly busy with other things in life that a lot of the things that they are absorbing about their society will not be addressed at the appropriate times. Maybe they'll be addressed before your kid's even ready to hear it, because that's another thing that's out of your control. Because kids are highly individualistic as to when they are ready to have certain things shown to them, for them to learn about certain things, sex being one of them. And the other thing is, I don't think that parents should let their children spend the night at other people's houses unless they really, really know the parents. And I mean really, really, really know them and trust them. And even then, they might be better off just not letting it happen at all. And you might think that that's a way to destroy your kid's social life and all this and that. But I think way too much, I think this has been brainwashed into our society. Way too much credence is given to socialization and the techniques of letting your kids interact with other people as being a way to give your kids a broad social experience that will make them become better people because they've been socialized and not sheltered. You know what? You might want to shelter your kids. Look at the society around you. Do you really want that to be what teaches your children? Because that's what will happen if you send them to public school. They'll be propagandized from a very early age into a number of things. And if you do choose to use that system, you definitely need to have conversations with your children about what they're learning, not only from their teachers, but from their peers, and to be ready to go against the propaganda and to illustrate your points. Then you'll be taking the chance that they will look at their peers and everybody else as having more authority to you because of the numbers game. They'll be like, well, all these people are saying this, but my parents saying this. Who am I going to believe? You're taking a chance if you put them in the public system. Believe me, I know. There are a number of things that my children believe that I know aren't true, that I know the only reason why they believe them is because the society around them espouses to them as idioms, and they have implemented these idioms into their belief system for the time being. Thank God I only believe it's for the time being, and I know this long-term conversation I can have with them over time may get them to see certain things in reality the way they actually are. And a lot of people might think that I'm being arrogant, that I'm a know-it-all, that I know everything. No, I'm not. What I am is somebody who's highly adaptable to new information and to being proven wrong. I have absolutely no, basically, ego that is derived from being correct in anything I say. Anything I say could be completely fallible and wrong and false, and I'm completely open to that. And I think that's the correct way to be. Now, that being said, I will tell you why and how I've come to my conclusions and why I feel so strongly about them, and may in fact declare them as being the truth, because in my mind that's a good way to operate, because it gives you functionality in the world. You can then go out into the world and say, these are my beliefs and here is why. This is why I believe this to be the truth, no matter what anybody says about it. As if you go about operating in the world in that way, even if you're wrong, and it's not going to matter, because when you find out you're wrong, all you have to do is own up to it and move on. Own up to it and move on. And you'll be very happy, because your ego or your happiness is not derived from being correct or right in some kind of ideological belief that you've adopted along the way. It's really going to benefit you if you can do that, and it's not an easy thing to do. And we're told in a million ways by our society why that shouldn't be a functional way to go about interacting with society, and how it will hurt you in your status and a number of things, and perhaps it will. I can't say my status hasn't been affected by the way I've gone about it. I've destroyed my status, though, for a number of reasons, so I'm fine with that, I went completely crazy loonball nutty and tried to swim across the ocean on the eve of my 18th birthday, and almost died as a result of that. Was pulled out of the water by the Coast Guard, and then I had to, figure out everything after that. But I almost died, all right, because I was broken. The system around me brought me to the edge and pinnacle of my destruction, and I do believe, and it could have just been luck, but I do believe that my fate on this earth was to experience that so that I could understand it and understand exactly what happened to me and why, so that I can help other people going through similar things. And it can be not as dramatic as that, because really a similar thing is just as simple as being alone in your beliefs, knowing that you're right and true, and understanding exactly why, and nobody else around you understanding that. And even if you're wrong about your beliefs, the feeling of being in that is probably a good place to be, because at least you're really being a human. You're being yourself. You're figuring things out for yourself. And I went through that, and it almost destroyed me. Made me a little bit more practical, I'll tell you that much. But I've gotten to my place, and I think I've really just kind of helped further this conversation in why democracy may not be the answer. So until next time, have a good one, everyone.